What if the murder weapon was never brought from outside? What if it was already inside the house? Clean, ordinary, invisible. Today's story is called The Borrowed Knife, a case where a simple household habit turned into the most damning piece of evidence in mysterious stranger. Just a knife and a neighbor who forgot one small detail. The ordinary city of the house looked calm. Too calm for what had happened inside that a modest home. Clean kitchen to well-arranged shelves. Nothing broken. Nothing missing. When police arrived, they didn't expect anything unusual. There were no signs of struggle near the entrance. Forced entry. Shattered glass. Alarms at first. Glance, it looked like a crime committed by someone who belonged there. Where the victim was found inside his home, lying motionless. The cause of death was clear, multiple stab wounds. The weapon? A kitchen knife. Not hidden, not exotic, not custom made. Just an ordinary knife from the victim's own kitchen drawer. That single fact changed everything. First, assistant investigators immediately made a natural assumption. If the knife came from the kitchen, the killer must be someone from the house. It made sense. Why would an outsider enter empty-handed? Why use a random kitchen knife instead of bringing their own weapon? The house was treated as a closed circle. Family members, close acquaintances, people with access. Suspicion stayed indoors. The kitchen tells us why police carefully examined the kitchen. All knives were accounted for, except one. The missing knife perfectly matched the wounds blood splatter in the drawer, signs of panic in the kitchen, which meant the knife wasn't grabbed during a fight. It was already out, already accessible. That detail mattered. The forensic tar on the knife handle was sent for fingerprint analysis. Investigators expected to find the victim's fingerprints or fingerprints of someone living in the house instead. They found something unexpected, a clear, readable set of fingerprints belonging to neither. That was the moment the case cracked open. The fingerprints matched a neighbor, not a criminal, not a suspect. Yet, just someone living. Nearby. First, this didn't make sense. Why would a neighbor's fingerprints be on a kitchen knife inside someone else's house? Then investigators asked a simple question. Had the knife ever left the house? The small habit that changed. Neighbors were interviewed. Casual conversations revealed something important. Earlier that day, the neighbor had visited the victim. They spoke briefly. Nothing unusual. Then someone remembered. The neighbor had borrowed a knife, just for a moment, just to cut something, just a harmless favor. And according to everyone, the knife was never returned, but the assumption that everyone had assumed the killer used a knife already inside the house. That assumption blinded them. They didn't consider that the knife had left and come back. The neighbor had carried the knife out, kept it, then later returned, not as a guest, but as a killer. Some investigators reconstructed the timeline. The neighbor borrows the knife earlier in the day, leaves with it. No suspicion returns later when the victim is alone, uses the same knife to commit the murder, leaves the weapon behind, assuming it would point inward, a perfect illusion. The weapon looked domestic. The crime looked personal. The suspect looked safe. Why the knife was left? Criminals often believe, if the weapon belongs to the house, it can't lead to me. The neighbor assumed fingerprints wouldn't matter, or that their prints would be dismissed. They underestimated forensic science. The power of fingerprints don't care about stories. They don't forget. They don't lie. That knife handle remembered who held it last. And when the evidence didn't scream, it whispered. But it whispered the truth. When confronted, the neighbor denied everything. I borrowed it earlier, yes, but I returned it. The fingerprints said otherwise. Pressure mounted. Details contradicted. The calm mask cracked. The borrowed knife had become borrowed time. And eventually, the truth surfaced. The neighbor admitted returning later. Admitted using the knife. Admitted believing it was the perfect crime. They thought a household object would erase their trail. Instead, it exposed them. Why this case? I think this case isn't about complexity. It's about simplicity and forced entry and advanced planning. Professional tools, just familiarity access and a small everyday habit borrowing something, forgetting to return it, leaving fingerprints behind. The lesson back and index pointing right. Small habits leave big clues that we underestimate ordinary actions. Criminals rely on that a borrowed knife, that a casual visit, that a moment no one remembers. But science remembers everything. The final stage to this case teaches us that danger doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it lives next door. Sometimes it borrows sugar. Sometimes it borrows a knife. And sometimes it never gives it back. If you enjoyed this true crime story, don't forget to subscribe, and share. More real cases, more hidden lessons. More crime solved by the smallest details, because in true crime, nothing is ever just ordinary.